Woo woo! Hi everyone!
Hello and good evening.
Hello, world. Somewhere down south.
Woo woo!
Hello.
Hi.
Also, very much down south. I'm fine. I'm having tea. It's very exciting. It's
Kevin, there's no
minutes.
sound. They can't hear you.
Yeah. So sorry. So what time is it in Sydney this morning?
It is 7 minutes past 6.
Well, literally, it's still night, so you should be all right with the alcohol. Just saying.
Oh, just yeah. Well, hang on. Wait a minute. This is not water. There's a lot of it. It's going to be an interesting podcast.
It's going to be awesome. So we've got a load of people already joining the show on the group chat. So guys, just shout out who you are, where you're from. We've got people from all over the place. We've got war boys, war girls, people from Europe. We've got the Australian.
Kevin, nobody hears you.
We have the Australian lot. They should do now. It's all on.
No, they can say. Yeah, they can hear you now.
Good. Don't worry.
No, they're asking you to turn back off now.
Oh, thanks, Mark. So, Mark, welcome. First of all, welcome, sir. We are absolutely in awe of your work. Absolutely stunning art. Amazing film on the film production design side. Just to start off, for a few questions, how did you sort of move into the film production design sort of area? Were you at school? Were you sort of really good at art and wanted to be like a comic book artist, or?
Actually, I completely failed art at school.
Oh, right.
Nobody can fail art.
I did. No. I totally failed. I wasn't even allowed to continue after year 11. I grew up on this little island in the middle of the Pacific, and the art teacher at the school, which was only 300 kids. The art teacher was the woodwork teacher, and his artistic brain was in the shape of a hammer. It wasn't very good, so I didn't learn anything there, but I drew crap loads because we didn't have television or movies or anything like that. So didn't see any of that stuff growing up. So I just drew. And at some point I discovered Asterix books and thought, oh, these are kind of cool. So I started drawing things that I thought looked like Asterix books because we didn't have comics either. So obviously a very deprived childhood. And then when I got to finishing school back over in Australia, failed art. Because my teachers didn't like me very much. I ended up going and doing a PhD in genetics.
Oh, gosh.
For some reason or another. But while I was doing that, I continued to do the little comics and started doing it at the university newspaper, which ended up with me quitting my PhD, doing comics full time, becoming incredibly broke. But I did a comic for a band called This Is Serious Mum, who I recommend anybody out there who can find find YouTube stuff about this band, TISM. They're insane idiots. Yeah. No longer exist, but they're fun. I did a comic for them, and which managed to get me banned.
You like to be banned.
Yeah, got banned. That's good. Yeah. But a director in Sydney was a fan of the band, and he had just broken his previous storyboard artist and needed a new one. And so they rang me and said, can you come and storyboard a film? And I had literally seen about 20 or so films in my life before that. So I had no idea what I was doing. And arguably 26 years later, I still don't know what the fuck I'm doing. But anyway, so I went and did that, and that's how I got into films.
Oh.
Moved to Sydney, haven't quite got around to leaving yet.
Yeah.
So there you go.
Oh my God. So what is the like the main process then from when you're starting on storyboarding? Do you get the script first? You know, at a high level, how do you sort of what's the battle plan?
At the highest level, sometimes I get a script.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes there isn't. Let's just say it's gone from the Sublime, which is obviously what we'll probably talk about again later, which is working with George. Oh, sorry, I'm dropping heavy things. Working with George, who knows what he wants and has done lots and lots of thinking and has a very clear idea visually in his head about what he's after. So that's the Sublime, and it goes to the Ridiculous, which is another George Lucas, who goes, okay, today we're going to do a space chase.
and that's it. That's the clue.
And you go, and what happened? You know, I was hoping you could tell me.
It's the sound of tumbleweed.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Anyway, slightly paraphrased, but not very.
Yeah. So when you don't get some sort of like guidance from the producer, how much free rein do you have to be creative? You know, with camera views and design of characters and what's going on, or.
Well, again, it depends on the director or the producer that you're working with, but most directors are. I feel like I have to do a Ryan Brown stuff doing this on the screen.
He does say hello, by the way.
That's the Z side, of course, not the Get Fucked side.
Oh yeah,
we love him. We love him. He's funny, and alcoholic and all that sort of stuff. And he should come back out of the woods sometime soon. What was I saying? I've distracted myself already. No. So, in terms of how much you get with a producer, different producers, different directors, different things. George can be with you all the time, and like literally you can't get rid of him. Or you don't see a director for months, and occasionally you send stuff over, and they go, "Okay, thanks, I can do some more now." So yeah. I have to say this one. My best brief that I ever got was on Black Panther, with Ryan Coogler, who there was no script. At that stage, I didn't know anything about the character. I didn't know anything about any of the other characters in the film. I didn't know what the basic premise of the film was. And he said, "So man, yeah, today this is okay. We're going to do this. Okay. So this is convoy, right now. This is convoy. It's traveling through the forest, and you know, there's guys with guns, and there's this girl in one of the trucks, and and then there's Black Panther. And he's in the plane flying overhead, and." Chick gets really gets his costume, drops down, throws some shit, stops those cars, and then, this is sharp, right? We're at the front of the convoy stops. He's at the front of the convoy, he's in the jungle, and the camera comes out of the jungle, goes down the convoy, everyone's getting out with their guns, ready to shoot, and then we come back to the end of the convoy, and Black Panther's there, man. Just go all the way there, and shit happens and everyone dies. Do that.
Do that. Go.
And everyone dies.
Easy.
So
I was like,
that is crazy. So how detailed are the storyboards? Are they? Do you sort of do like camera angles and stuff like that, or is it more?
Yes. Well, that's what they start off looking like.
Yep. Oh wow. Yep.
Crap. And by the time, semi-blank, yes. Or actually, sorry, that's what they start looking like. Yeah, blank. Yeah. Oh, hang on, that doesn't work. Blank, and then like that, and then everyone's straight, and then and then like that, and then I spend a lot of time lying on my back on the floor, crying and trying to figure out what to do next, and then I sit down and start drawing things that look a little bit better. So some films are really quick, and you just do stuff that you can barely kind of tell what it is, and. Other films, like the one I'm doing now, we have a little bit more time because we're all in ISO. And we're not interrupted by a 7-year-old. You get to spend a little bit more time doing. Sorry, I have to do it again. Thanks, Brian.
Brian, off.
I blame Ryan Brown for that. He started a whole new fashion, you know. Yeah.
So, do you get any extra credits for actually writing the whole bloody film?
Oh, fuck no. What are you talking about?
Is-
No.
It's the mistake you made of being quite good. See, if you were rubbish, then you'd be no problem at all.
Absolutely. Well, the nearest I got to, I actually did co-write a film, which never got made a few years ago, and no, it won't get made. It was shit. No, that was a film that started off being literally. It was the most. I actually took it on because it was the most right-wing film I'd ever read a script for, and I wanted to try and completely subvert it in the right.
Oh yes.
A left-wing film. And by the end of the process, it had turned from a film about ex-Navy SEALs going to, which is the producer's contract, and ex-Navy SEALs going into the jungle or whatever it was to save poor American teenagers who'd been kidnapped by some bloody stupid terrorist idea that they were supposed to be. I think the twist for these guys, because they were so bloody right wing, is they were Islamic, but they were also Nazis.
Was there dinosaurs as well?
Not yet.
Oh.
But close. It was going that way. So I went. I'm going to make sure this film never happens in that form. So I try to subvert it. And by the end of the process, it had literally turned into a film about some ex-Navy guys going, ex-Navy SEALs guys, Navy SEAL guys going to try and save a pink elephant.
Awesome. You are a star, sir.
From poaching.
It's a pink.
But what I will say, and I must say this, is the pink elephant wasn't my idea.
Oh.
What? Was it? Or was
Yeah,
it?
did the alcohol help in that one?
The alcohol helped the whole process. But
Is
anyway,
it possible for you to give us a hint on what you're working on at the moment?
That's where I reach for the handy prop. Oh, hang on. No, I'll just do that.
Oh my gosh, guys, can you guess? People on the chat. Oh my god, I am so excited about that film.
Chris has lost his hand. That can't be good. Sorry, Chris.
Is that the script? It is now.
So yes, no, that's an interesting one to be working on with in isolation because it's insane.
Oh my god!
Can I just ask, with Black Panther, when you got the sort of précis of it from the guy, how far in advance of filming was that, time-wise?
Oh, that was actually about 9 months in advance.
So there's no script at all 9 months in advance of filming?
I hadn't seen one, and hey, look, literally, no, I worked on that sequence that he told me. And this is what I love about movie making because it's so fun at the same time. It's so frustrating.
Pitch meeting must be hilarious.
Yeah. Well, pitch meeting is always awesome. But then again, it's this is Marvel, so they do whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
They just go here, have large bags of money. But with that sequence, I worked on it for 3 months. I've finally completely finished it, sent it off, and literally the day after I sent it off, I went to see Captain America: Civil War, which I hadn't seen in the cinema, and Black Panther was appearing for the first time. And that is when I discovered that the character was bulletproof. Kind of changed the entire bloody sequence that I was working on because he spent the entire time trying to avoid being shot by people.
Oh.
It was a lot quicker.
Well,
We've had a few guesses in the chat room for the next film being Thor 4. Break Bear reckons it's Thor 4.
It's
Imperator reckons it's Thor.
Say it was Thor. What would Taiko be like to work with? What? Because his films are just awesome. He's got such an awesome sense of humour. What's he like to work with?
Well, he's usually kind of like you guys on the other side of the screen. And at the present moment, because everyone's in isolation over there, my phone calls are like here out like on the screen with him, and I'm sitting here trying to show him storyboards on sharing screens, showing him storyboards, and he's usually either lying on his couch with his hair kind of all over the place, just going.
So he's obviously impressed. Yeah.
Well, he's a New Zealander.
Right, yeah.
I mean, I was born in New Zealand too, so I'm gonna claim immunity from any criticism. But no, he's a New Zealander. New Zealanders are a bit like Australians about 40 years ago. They don't give much away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So they don't necessarily let you know whether you're doing well or doing poorly. They'll just go, yeah, that's good. But I've been trying to get him to do the any reviews in his Korg voice, but he hasn't done it yet.
He hasn't done it yet.
I have to get him. I obviously have to get him really excited, so I have to do something. Like if I don't do any work for 2 weeks, and then say, "Hey, I haven't done any work," I bet you I get a Korg voice, but it'll probably be at the end of it. Yeah, you're fired. So anyway, we'll see.
So how did you come across George Miller and get involved with the whole Mad Max Fury Road?
Well, the good thing. I feel like I should have been doing this with this thing on the entire time.
You like gardening, do you?
Yes. It's actually my social isolation mask.
I'm sure people keep the 2 meter distance.
Oh my god!
When you wear that.
They keep more than a 2 meter distance. It's awesome. It's really good when you're driving too, especially when you brake hard. Tom Hardy's got a really bloody small head. That's all I'm going to say.
That looks.
What does the police say when this happens?
That does look remarkably real. Is that a prop or?
No, that might be the slightly realish one.
Slightly really.
Don't tell the props department.
Okay.
Yes.
I like
It looks
that.
amazing.
Is it true that they found
The attached screen.
Max's leather jacket in the old prop store at Kennedy Miller?
Oh yes, I was there. In fact, we were the ones who found
Oh
it.
my god!
That's
All right.
unbelievable.
Oh, wow.
V1 covered in mold. No way.
It was listed as because it was this old beautiful Art Deco theatre from the 1930s, and it's this massive, beautiful building, and then it's just built on red clay, and so underneath the building is just this crawl space that's just red clay, which is highly appropriate for Mad Max. And they had just shoved shit down there over the years. George had been there for about 20, 25, 30 years at that stage.
Just shovel the next film along so it gets piled down there.
Yeah, exactly. So there's all these bloody plastic crates and wooden boxes. It's a bit like, Into the Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
And you're wandering in, and the janitor of the building opened up, and we all wandered in. I think it was Peter Pounds and myself. I don't think Brendan came down. I don't think Brendan would come down for that sort of thing. So we wandered around. We started looking at things, and there was the old city model from the end of Thunderdome over in the corner. Yeah. And there was these dummy sharks and stuff from some of the old television shows that George had done. And then we opened up these old plastic military plastic crates, and there was, guard costumes from Thunderdome, and then we found Tina Turner's chainmail suit, and then there was Max's jacket and pants.
Oh my god!
And there's everyone thinking, oh, it's really nice they're giving a nod to the old films. Bollocks! They've just reused the whole lot again, haven't they? Bunch of cheapskates, the lot of you.
Don't give away the secrets.
So how did you get involved with? How did you meet George in the first place and sort of get involved with his? Yeah,
you asked for that before. I forgot to answer. I'm good like that. Tea hasn't kicked in yet. Probably won't either. I literally, after I did that first film, which was fun in '96. That was Dark City,
which was an amazing film.
It was a good first film to have worked on. Although I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
There's a bit of love in chat room for that from Mark Standing, saying it's one of his favourite
amazing
films.
Graphically, it was just stunning, absolutely awesome.
Yeah, and the original script was even more insane. I had people turning into plants and all sort of stuff, and a lot more alien action. But like the aliens were actually cockroaches.
Oh God, blimey!
All sort of stuff. Yeah, it could have been a better film, but it was visually it was amazing. But anyway, I did that, and then I went, "Oh, that storyboard looks a bit fun." And gee, I just got paid more than I've ever got paid in my life. What if I could do this again? And I was one of the other people working in the art department was this lovely Korean American girl who'd been flown over from LA to do some work, and we'd got on quite well, and she was asked to go to go and have a meeting with George, because the producers in Australia all bloody talk, and they've just gone, hey, she's amazing. Let's try and keep her in Australia. Let's just lock the borders down and keep her in Australia. So she'd been recommended to Doug Mitchell, who's George's producing partner, and as someone to come in to work on Babe 2. So because she had an animation background, so they called her up and said, "Do you want to come in for a meeting?" And she went, "Yeah." And then she turned to me and said, "Can you come?" I'm a bit nervous. So I went, all right. So I drove her over there, and I went to go and sit downstairs, and she went, "Can you come to the meeting?" I was like, "Okay." And I went, "Yeah, all right. Okay, this is a bit interesting." And they had the meeting, and I sat in the corner, and don't think I've ever told this story. And I was sitting in the corner, and Doug Mitchell was just going, "Yeah, you're a lovely person, and who are you again?"
What do you do?
I am. Yeah. Anyway, they had this meeting, and they talked about what they were doing and stuff like that. And then this lovely girl turned around and said, "Well, actually, I have to go back to LA because I'm the primary carer for my mother, and I'm not staying here no matter what because I can look after my mother. But he draws storyboards."
Oh my God! Wow!
And that was it.
Why don't you talk to him? And Doug Mitchell went, "What? What? We've got storyboard artists here in the country? Oh, I didn't know that." Because literally, there's only about I think it was only about 3 or 4 people in Australia who storyboarded at the time, and they were all busy. Yeah. So they've been trawling around trying to find people from overseas, and no one knew that I was around. Admittedly, they probably don't really know that. Anyway, so I've ended up working on Babe 2.
Babe 2, that's how it started. That's crazy.
Yes, post-apocalyptic pig film. Actually, no, that should be the sequel to Babe, which should also be a sequel to Razorback. Who's seen Razorback?
I've not seen Razorback.
Oh my God, yeah.
So Razorback 2, Babe 3, Razorback 2. That's gonna be awesome.
So when did
giant killer pig sings?
So when did you?
You'll get those cockroaches.
Oh, definitely. So when did you get involved with the Fury Road? When was that on the horizon? Initially, when you first started off?
Well, bizarrely, we're sitting there storyboarding this bloody film about bloody talking pigs. Yeah. Thanks, Ryan. We're doing this film about pigs, and one day, George wanders past us as invariably did. Went, "Oh, I've got a guest coming today to come and talk about Mad Max," and we're all going, Mad Max. Who? And we all went, "Oh, this is interesting. I wonder who the guest is." And then we all came downstairs. There was a few of us storyboarding by then. We all came downstairs to go for lunch, and George was coming back from his lunch, and it was George and Brendan McCarthy. And this is back in mid-97, so I'd been working on Babe for about a year at that stage. So we were working on the pig film, and Brendan ended up staying. So he was downstairs. He was downstairs with Norman Morrisseau, who was the costume designer on Mad Max 2 and 3, who was just a lovely and incredibly eccentric but amazing lady. And she was working with Brendan. And then there was a screenwriter from LA, I don't know, can't remember, Eric something, who came over and he was going to write a script. And he didn't last very long because George just thought he sucked. Sorry,
Eric. Sorry.
Yeah.
Not really.
Yeah, it's just, this is not Lethal Weapon. And they were downstairs in the big Mad Max room downstairs. We're in the upstairs section working on storyboards for Babe, just going, we're working on pink film and we're downstairs.
God damn it.
Anyway, and then shooting began and Brendan went back home and Norma vanished back to her country, her house in the bush, and the screenwriter was never seen from again. I think he's buried in a shallow grave somewhere near the Pacific Highway. And then they did all the Babe stuff, and then I thought, oh, well, there you go. It's not going to happen. If they do Mad Max, I won't be part of that because I'm done here. And I went off and did a couple more films, and then I was in the middle of another film, and I got phoned up by Bill Miller, who's George's younger brother, who's also a producer there. And Bill said, can you come in and talk about storyboarding a film about penguins?
Obviously, you're the go-to man on that one.
Yeah, the animal go-to man.
The talking animal film. Awesome.
Okay, the penguin film.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting there just going, but I thought you were working on Mad Max. And, well, there you go. So I went in and went to see Bill and said, look, George is just waiting upstairs for you. So and just go up and see him in the central room. So I wandered up there and walked in, and it was just basically wall-to-wall concept art of cars and tribes people, just like and on this big whiteboard in the middle of the room was this logo, Mad Max Fury Road. Brendan had drawn.
My heart. Oh,
it's just like, okay. And I'm working on the penguin film. Great. And then George wandered in and went, Mark, hi. So when are you starting on this? And I think, and I still to this day don't know if I was actually legitimately asked to come in and work on the penguin film, or whether that was a subterfuge to shut me up so that I didn't say anything to anyone, or whether I accidentally got onto Fury Road because George thought I was called in to do Fury Road.
Right.
Still don't know.
I say go with the flow. Go with the flow, sir. Go with the flow.
I'll go.
So my question I'm dying for. Tell me about War Boys. Tell me how you created, how it's storied. Tell me everything, please.
Where did it come from?
The bits that I know. So I got there. I got there a little bit after. I think Brendan and George have been working together for about 6 months by then. They'd come back and they reconvened at the beginning of 1999. And they've been working on the story and the story document and stuff like that. And Brendan would be doing all these bloody pictures. And he kept on doing images of different tribes people. Now, Brendan's an amazingly visual artist, and he's got thousands of bloody ideas, a lot of which are incredibly arresting. But his tribes people were always really ornate, like nuts. Like you probably couldn't make them filmic if you tried, because it just would look slightly ridiculous.
So it wasn't just that he couldn't draw hair. That's why he did War Boys.
That's maybe where the penguins come from. I'm just putting things together.
Yeah. So there you go. Well, stuffed penguins on their heads. Skin penguins on their heads.
Write that one down.
Yep, we'll have that.
There's a story behind that. I'll talk about that later if I remember. But there'd already been a little bit of storyboarding being done then by Brendan and George had been working in the same room, and then another guy, Peter Pound, had been brought in by then, and Peter was also a great conceptualist. And he's particularly huge on cars, so he was a no-brainer for the film. And they brought me into storyboard. But the storyboards had started off with this they were very quickly done. And so everything was being, because we're drawing these bloody whiteboards, these, big whiteboards like chalkboards.
Yeah.
And they had these little fax printers down the bottom, because this is all pre-computer. Back then.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. And so we were drawing these really quick storyboards on these whiteboards. And because they were quick, I think we had to boil down the essence of the designs and make them really simple. And so the War Boys, and a lot of the War Boys, they were called Necro Boys at that point. The Necro Boys were all supposed to be sick. As you know, they're all supposed to be cancerous. They're all supposed to have short half-lives and all sort of stuff. So obviously you go with let's just make them look sick. So pale faces, no hair, all that sort of stuff. Cancerous
Larry
lumps.
and Barry.
Yeah, Larry and Barry, that sort of stuff. And we started doing that sort of stuff in the storyboards, and it just got slowly whittled down to just a simple idea, which is just basically board. But because we were basically doing the storyboards in black and white, no one ever really thought about colour, except for Immortan Joe, who at that point was just called the Immortan, and he was going to be blue.
Yeah.
He was just going to be painted blue instead of white to signify his link with water. But everything else is white. And so at some point it's just like, well, okay, what are they going to look like? And I think just through this process for elimination, it just became, let's just make them look unhealthy. And then it became this process of actually, let's just make them look whiter and whiter and whiter. And essentially it just got boiled down to let's just make them white. And it's just
so awesome.
Yeah, well, this is the thing. It was born out of practicality in the end, because they had all these stunties you had to do it. And the original concept was that the War Boys were all going to be teenagers. No one was going to be older than a late teen, because they were all dying.
Yeah.
So basically, most of them were supposed to be around about 13 to 14.
Oh, right.
But when you're trying to get 13 or 14 stunties and you don't want to break them, because there's this kind of thing about being safe. So they had to get proper stunt people in, and then obviously
they had to be cancerous then. They had to be really ill then.
And you had to disguise them, which is why they've all got different masks, because there's same stunties doing different jobs and all that sort of stuff. But also there's this practical element, which is they're also outside. And so they need to be covered, and outside in Namibian sun, they need to be covered in sunscreen.
Right, yeah.
So I think that was all this process of actually trying to make this work, and that's why in the end you get these stark white things with those magnificent, slightly skull-like things. And at some point we had this idea that we're going to have shark tooth tattoos around their mouths.
Oh my God!
To signify rank. The more tooth you got.
Oh, geez! Wow.
Which obviously didn't work, because obviously once you started slathering everybody in white paint, it's just like you're not going to see. Which is like more scarification.
Yeah.
But this is where the storyboarding comes in. You go along and then you change and amend to fit in. I guess.
And then the wardrobe designer comes on and just goes. And the makeup.
God damn!
Thank you.
And then the cinematographer comes on and goes, oh, fucking storyboard artists. And then the storyboarders come back and go, fuck everyone else. And the director goes, fuck all of you. And the producer goes, how much is that going to cost? And the skipper just goes, what's happening? So, yeah.
And the accountant's going, yeah, dead cheap, no outfits, fantastic, all in sync.
Yeah, just spray more white.
Well, I don't know if you can see our chat going, but there's a lot of war chants, which is coming from our war spawn, which are from Wasteland Weekend. It's our family, war spawn V8. So they're all our war boys. So they are actually screen specific, 100%. So you have to... Whisper is there, Jeet is there. So we have a lot of our V8 there. So, and they are absolute screen accurate. So you would be very proud.
I was watching a video just before this of your Wasteland Warrior of your Warboy remix.
Yeah.
And I was watching that and just going, yeah, it's amazing how effective and how threatening that Warboy makeup is. You can put anybody in it as long as they're of a as long as they're of a certain height, or even if they're short. It actually works amazingly at just boiling people down to their barest essence, and because of the blackness and the white skin and so that, it looks just threatening, but in this magnificently culty way. So it's a good look. It's a good look.
I mean, Nukes, look at Nukes. Nukes is on my leg. He's there living forever now. So it's just like, what a character. Just like, oh my God.
Yeah, the characters you've created are sort of iconic. It's won, was it 6 Oscars? Voted film of the decade. Possibly one of the best films ever made. Wow, absolutely stunning. Did you know when you were drawing it how epic the film was going to be?
You never know, but you hope.
You hope, yeah.
I mean, you can work on a film for bloody ages, and then and everyone sweats blood and tears, and then it comes out in the cinema, and you don't know whether a film's going to work or not, because you're always too close to it. You don't know until it's in front of an audience for the first time, which is why they do test screenings, which are stupid ideas, because basically test screenings are done for unfinished films, and they're never indicative of the final product, so you never get a proper read.
Yeah.
So you never know. But with Fury Road, we were all, George obviously, he's the creator, and then Brendan, Peter Pound, and myself were all Mad Max nuts. We love Mad Max, and so we were all just going, "Fuck, we want to do the best film ever." It's going to be better than Road Warrior, George. We're going to make it better than Road Warrior. And so, but also we wanted to make it a natural successor to Road Warrior. So we were trying to avoid all the pitfalls of Thunderdome. Although great
it
stuff,
definitely feels
great
much
stuff.
more cinematic, much more of the sort of sequel to Mad Max 2 than it does to Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Was that
I
a
think
conscious decision?
Well, I think a big part of it is just the nature of the actual story itself, or the plot, which is that you're literally outside for almost the entire film.
Yeah.
So whereas Thunderdome, so much of it is studio work, set work, and so as opposed to location work, so immediately you get a different feel, and it feels like a weirdly much more claustrophobic film in a strange way.
So much is set inside cabs, isn't it?
Well,
yeah,
totally. Yeah. I've got a big shout out for you, Mark. By the way, from Emil Minty, the feral kid. He said it's more of a story about you and about Fury Road. So a few years back, he went to the old office of Kennedy Miller Mitchell in King's Cross in Sydney. So he was there to do an interview for a special feature on a DVD for the High Octane collection. And while he was there, he met George, which he hadn't met since Mad Max 2. And as he walked in for the interview to chat to George, he walked past all the storyboards with Fury Road, all the Fury Road stuff, and all the model cars they'd built, all the props. And at that point he said he blew him away. It was absolutely stunning. So we will have to get you.
And the scary thing for him.
Yeah.
I was going to say the scary thing for him is that was only half the storyboards too.
How big was the room? Because I did see a few pictures where it's like a massive room with they're like sort of postcards shape size stories boards.
Yeah, well the storyboards are all roughly about iPhone size. When they were eventually printed out, it was just a stupid process we went through trying to get them all to look right. But there was. Basically, the room was probably about 20 meters long, maybe.
God. Yeah.
20 meters long, about 8 meters wide, and basically we had all these pin boards going right around the room, and then right around the room again. And so this is like a spiraling labyrinth you had to go through, and basically they were all pinned up in it, and there ended up being something like I think officially when I finished, there was 4,018 storyboards. No, I didn't count every single one. But there was I think there was 4,018 storyboards in the final document that I finished in 2001, and then there would have been another probably 12,000 that weren't used.
Jesus, so there is a question for you. So, is there anything you draw up that you wish made it into Fury Road, but it didn't make it into? It came from Rodent, no last name.
You know what? It was such a boiled down thing, job that we didn't have too much wastage. It was actually literally more on the lines of just finessing ideas. There was a couple of things that didn't make it in. There was this, which you guys probably already know about, which was there was going to be another tribe in the bog. Yeah. In the bog,
the green place that wasn't.
Yeah, the green place that was definitely not the green place. Yeah. When they were seeing all the stilt walkers on crows, and there was going to be another tribe there that had helicopter backpacks.
Oh wow!
Hey, Gyro Captain,
essentially, and it was going to be this attack on the war rig from above and from all sides by these characters with at that point they had napalm bombs and they were attacking the war rigs from all sides. There was going to be the stuff with people using the harpoons in the back of the war rig, shooting them down and all that sort of stuff. But in the end, there was just too many things that were fundamentally too silly about the idea. But also, if you really start digging into it and just go, if you've got a helicopter backpack, that means you could go to the Citadel and you could just fly up to the top and you'd be in.
Yeah.
So that fucks that idea. So let's just figure that. So that got cut out.
Yeah.
Which was good. But there was one little scene where which they never finished. And there's some of it in the special features, which was what happened to Miss Giddy.
Yeah.
And which was that sequence where Morton Joe's having her hauled up in front of the war boys to shame them on their incompetence to be able to find the wives. And there was going to be the sequence involving her death, essentially, how she's sacrificed. And that was actually an interesting scene, but in the end, I just don't think it got in the way of the thing. Other than that, though,
how was this with Furiosa's mechanical arm? Did she always had the mechanical arm? Was a question we just got in as well from Dave West.
Let's just say there was a few mechanical arms. I wasn't actually around for the shoot. So I can't say for sure because that was over in Namibia and I was doing other things.
Penguins.
But it was
penguins.
No. That was 12 years after storyboards.
Pig 3.
So how long in advance do you do the storyboards then before the movie is shot?
Well, usually it's only not that far ahead, like within a year of shooting.
Okay.
Because Mad Max went through 3 rounds of pre-production because it kept on being cancelled. It was 12. I think I finished doing the storyboards in 2001, and George finished writing the script in was it like about April 2002.
Gosh.
It's only a year.
Shooting more or less started in 2012.
Yeah.
So to shoot it. Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Was Mel Gibson initially planned for Mad Max? Do you know, back then?
Yes.
Yes, and then
totally.
Because of all the delays.
All sorts of things. He actually came in, and George, he came in for a couple of days, and we had him in the room with us, and George pitched him the film, and George was unaccountably incredibly nervous. I don't know why. So George, we were all in the room, and George was pitching by going through all the storyboards because the script hadn't been read at that point. It was just storyboards, and so George is pitching the film to Mel Gibson, and it's just like, oh yeah, no. So and then Max is going here, and that's you, and you're doing this, and then she wasn't called Furious at that point; she was called the Warrior Woman, the Praetorian. And the Praetorian's doing this, and you're doing this, and you're doing that, and Winston just going, fuck. And Brendan McCarthy wouldn't be able to control himself. He'd just go, and George, and then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens, and get the fuck on with it. And George goes, sorry, yeah. And Mel Gibson literally came in. He sat in the same chair for 2 days, and they just moved around the room on these chairs, and Mel Gibson started. At that stage, he was actually, at that stage, he was actually, when he got in, he was really hyperactive. And by the end of it, 2 days later, he was like this.
Time.
Yeah. Oh my God, we're still going.
This is unreal.
But he did come in. He did say, "I really want to do it, but you've got to do it now because I'm nearly 50, and I don't fucking think I can do most of this stuff now, let alone in a few years' time. So let's do it now." And there was all this other stuff going on with the studios because Mad Max went through several studios as well. At one point, Universal was going to do it, and at one point, Fox was going to do it, and it all got very complicated. But yeah. Anyway, so
we have our weekly competition, isn't it?
Oh yes. So we've got we've got our own game called Celebrity Thunderdome. Oh, so what we've got is we've got a casket, and every show I pull 2 names out, 2 top celebrities from the world of combat, I suppose you could probably call it, and then between you and Skelly, you both have 30 seconds to convince the audience to vote for yours. Does that make sense? I don't know if you've seen a previous one of these.
I saw Ryan's.
Yes.
So you know what's coming
so
roughly.
Let's see who we got on this week. We've had some very strange ones. I can't even remember half the ones we've had. I've got to put them all up.
We've had a made-up one.
Okay, so this show, we have Anne's. Are you ready? It's gonna be good. So
I have a swig of your water.
Mark, your fighter is Flash Gordon. Okay, so your celebrity fighter is Flash Gordon, and Skelly, yours is Homer Simpson. Okay, so it's Flash Gordon against...
I was hoping for Bertie Bassett.
Flash Gordon against Homer Simpson. Mark Sexton, you have 30 seconds to explain to the audience and convince them why Flash Gordon will win the fight. Over to you, sir.
Go.
Well, I'm going to go the Dino De Laurentiis 80s version, I think, because I have to. So that means that I've got beautifully coiffured blonde hair, and I'm shot in a nice soft focus. And so I think the only thing I can possibly do at this point is actually say I'm using hair acting to distract Homer from the fact that I have a large plate of donuts that have been laced with... What are they laced with? Laced with something really good. Epsom salts. And Homer to actually just be distracted by the hair from seeing the Epsom salt sprinkle over these donuts, and he's then, of course, going to see the donuts, be distracted, eat the donuts, and then he's going to have explosive diarrhea for about 24 hours, which is going to completely incapacitate him, if not kill him.
I think that's probably one of the best ones we've ever had, actually. I don't want to sway the audience, but that was good. That was good. Okay, then, Skelly, you've got 30 seconds for Homer Simpson.
Okay, well, Homer's eaten far worse than Epsom salts in his time, so I think they barely get a little bit of a fart out of him. And in any case, he can weaponize his diarrhea. He can do anything like that. He's virtually indestructible. And I think Flash Gordon messing around with his beautiful coiffure just unleashed the beast in our home, because, you know, he's not very hirsute himself. So seeing him waffling around like that, he'll just go full on fisticuffs and just pound him into the ground.
I thought he'd just strangle him. Wouldn't he just strangle him?
Well, he'd do all kinds of things. Probably grab him by the legs, chuck him a little bit. You know, there'd be the Hulk happening here, the Incredible Homer, and he might also toss him down, get his bowling ball out, and land a striker square in the nuts, and then eat more donuts that are laced with Epsom salts, because he can eat anything.
And then sit on. You're
not supposed to help him out. You're not supposed to help him out by ideas here.
I'm quite happy for Flash to actually go down.
Storyboarding too much.
and well, there you go.
And a bit of an own goal.
There you go, guys.
So, audience, over to you.
You have to the end of the show to vote. So, is it Flash Gordon or Homer Simpson to win tonight's Celebrity Thunderdome?
Was that Flush? It's Flush Gordon.
Is there anybody you'd like to do a shout?
It will be Flash Gordon.
Is there anybody you'd like to do a shout out to, Mark?
Everyone. Hello.
A man of the people.
That was a cute
man
one.
of the people.
Well, shout out to my family who are asleep next door. Well, I think they're still asleep. I haven't heard my child yet. A 7-year-old could come in here at any moment and just go, "Daddy, what's going on? Who are these people?"
Yeah. I just wanted to say how amazing the Mad Max Fury Road graphic novels, the comics are. They were absolutely stunning with the background stories. Amazing. So what gave you the idea to release those? Was that always planned? As the film came out?
I know when we were doing the storyboards back in the day, we all talked about doing comics. I mean, obviously Brendan's had lots of experience in doing comics, and I've been banned doing comics. And Peter Pound used to do comics as well, so we all had a comic book background. And George himself had actually done a little single page comic to pitch the original Mad Max.
Oh, wow!
So we all liked the idea, but there was lots of discussions about we could do a comic book adaptation. But at some point, after everyone else had vanished and it was just me and George, I'd said to George, "I really want to do comics, some comics based on the film, George. That'd be awesome." And George went, "Oh, yeah, I'll think about it." Yeah. That's 2001, and then occasionally I'd see him after that and I'd say, "George, any more thoughts about the Mad Max stuff?" "Yeah, I'm still thinking about it." And then I literally got a phone call in September 2014 from George's assistant, who said, George just wanted to speak to you quickly. Is that okay?" And I was like, yeah. I'm in the middle of a film. And George goes, "Oh, hi, Mark. I've been thinking about it, and I think I'd quite like to do this comics now." Just like
only 10 years later.
13 years later, Jesus God.
So how did you work out which 3 stories you were going to do? And also, apart from those 3, which other ones would you like to add on to the collection? Which stories do you think would make an awesome comic?
Well, how do we choose those stories? Well, literally, actually, there actually ended up being 5 stories. There was 2 in the first. Yeah, there was 4 stories, and then there was one special one we did for the little trade paperback. Literally, George basically I went and saw George, and he basically wrote down a series of ideas he had for the stories, for the backstories, and because he and the other scriptwriter, Nico Lathouris, who's this lovely, incredibly intense little Greek bloke who must go through and actually really interrogate everything. He's got to have, I've got to get back to the DNA of the script, and everything that happens in the film, it's got to have a reason, George. And so they'd actually gone through over 12 years and actually come up with backstories for all these things. Oh, wow. And it was part of Nico and George's process, because Nico's not only a scriptwriter, but he's also a dramaturg, so he works with the actors. Right. And weeks with them to get the characters and stuff like that. And so Nico needed this so he could get them to be honest and and so they had all these stories. And so George went, "Oh, let's turn these into stories, into comics." So he basically just wrote down a list of things, and then we just basically said, "Well, we've got 6 months to get this all done, and we can only do a certain amount. So let's just choose 4 of those stories, the core stories, which was the Nux and Morton Joe, Furiosa meeting the wives, how she became allied with the wives, and obviously a story about Max and explaining a couple of things or rationalising a couple of things. But there was other stories that George wanted to do, and I know we talked about the bit which was, if we'd had more time, and if George wasn't hardly sick of talking about Mad Max by then, we would have probably gone back and done a story about Coma, the Doof Warrior, his origin. I would have loved to have seen a story. George had this idea. He really was keen to do a story about how Furiosa did a deal with Rock Riders to get passage through the canyon.
Yeah.
And there was going to be that basic idea about how that worked out and what she had to do in order for that to happen. And then there was some other ideas floating around about, a war boy culture and how that worked a little bit more. There's this idea about the hazing ritual, putting proto war boys through the ritual of, just dumping them out in the wasteland and then expecting them to get back through the wasteland and then back through all the smelly people underneath the citadel to the citadel and surviving, which would have been a fun.
We should mention that to the order of the V8 and see if they'll whisper. Are you up for that?
I think that should be. That would be a really good reality show.
I think that'd be amazing.
So, jump in the middle of the Mojave, not far from Edwards AFB, make your own way.
Oh, no. But at the end of it, you've got to have about 10,000 or maybe 1,000 smelly people who are really, 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 really desperate for everything that they can eat.
That sounds like Wasteland Weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, coming to that, it comes to my mind now, the Never Have I Ever. And I made the Never Have I Ever special one, obviously for Fury Road, because of our special guest tonight. So here are the 2 options of Never Have I Ever. And that's, again, back to our audience. So Never Have I Ever, number 1, is played mini golf with Immortan Joe in the desert, or Never Have I Ever been carried by a whole army of war boys through the desert.
So one of those is true, one is not. So, Mark, which do you think? And over to you, audience, as well. Put on the chat what you think.
Except of our V8, because they will know the truth.
Yes. I'm particularly taken by the idea of Hugh Keithburn in the middle of the desert playing mini golf, and actually knowing Hugh Keithburn, I'd actually say that would be entirely probable.
Yes, yeah.
But only if he was using his Immortan War Club. So it wouldn't be very good for aiming, and he'd be crap. And
I didn't say he won.
Yes. But I'm going to go, sadly, although I love the mental image, and hopefully he's in full regalia at the same time. But I'm going to go with you being carried by a bunch of war boys around through the desert, but hopefully they weren't planning on eating you at the end.
No, not at all.
We will find out at the end of the show. Another.
Did you sprinkle yourself with Epsom salts?
Totally. I love this Epsom
No,
salt.
I take that next time. That's a good hint. When I go next time, I sprinkle myself in Epsom salt.
Or have the Epsom salts before you get carried around by the war boys and see what happens.
Just
don't give me ideas.
A quick question: when you were designing, or when you were doing the storyboards for Immortan Joe, at that point, did they know they were going to have Hugh as the actor?
No, actually, initially he was being drawn as a very, very, very tall, bald, blue man, who basically
Isn't that awesome? It's from our friend made in LA, Carol. He's made in our war bear. It's my war bear. You can even move. Look, his eyes.
Now, that's perfect, except I think that your friend needs to make one more where one of the eyes is missing and it's replaced by scar
like
tissue.
Carol,
So he's got to actually stitch over the eyes. So it's just got scar tissue.
Okay, I'll let Carol know.
So initially he was tall and blue.
That's awesome. I love it. Yes, he was tall and blue. He had the face mask on, and basically he was a bit more like Humongous, but without the hockey mask. And he was much more comic booky villain in the storyboards. But that was basically because that's just what had been drawn at the beginning. And then I think that look of Immortan Joe more or less came out of a slight diversion that happened the second time the film went into production, where Weta Workshop became involved. George got very keen on Weta Workshop after the Lord of the Rings films, and was just really interested in seeing what they could do. And although they came up with lots of amazing stuff and they did amazing artwork and all sorts of stuff, but they came from a very different sensibility, and so most of the ideas were just they were the wrong universe. But
a bit too Muppets.
No,
I got it right. Moving swiftly along.
A different tone.
I'll tell you what, though, they did. I mean, the prosthetic makeup was fabulous. They did these amazing stuff where they actually had this guy who came on and did this whole thing, dressed, made up as a war boy with the facial tattoos and all sort of stuff, and one red eye, and then he had this big cancerous lump here and stuff like that, and they had this lovely video stuff of him doing it, and then him poking his thing and it bursting. Well, the problem was that they just looked a little bit too orc-like. So they were just going for that orc sensibility as opposed to something that was really stark. So that was when, and I think the biggest issue they had was they hadn't quite got the idea that George had, which was that the wasteland could still look beautiful.
Yeah, definitely.
And so their world was very ugly, and I think that was the big problem. And that's why they didn't work out. But the thing they got right was Immortan Joe. So they were the ones that came up with the perspex bodysuit,
and the medals,
and him being coloured, white was a Weta idea as well.
Right.
So that's how they came out. And then I think Hugh just bought the hair. And this is interesting because Hugh had. Would have been a relief to Hugh because the film he was going to do with George before that, because they hadn't worked together since the original Mad Max, but Hugh had come in to do Justice League Mortal.
Yeah.
That George was going to do that Justice League film, and Hugh was going to play the part of the Martian Manhunter.
Oh my God.
So that meant he had to have this amazing prosthetic, and that's this huge prosthetic, full body prosthetic, which is what Weta came in to do that originally. And he was wearing this bloody prosthetic makeup, which was amazing. He got incredible expressions out of it, stuff like that. But he'd be in the chair for about 6 hours.
Yeah.
And Hugh he's a fantastic guy. At that point, he wasn't that fit.
Yeah.
And so he'd be walking around with something like about 50 or 60 or 80 pounds of bloody makeup on him, and he'd start to sweat.
Yeah.
And that would all go straight into the latex and make it heavier because it wouldn't get out. So he'd start sweating, and then he'd be weighing about twice the amount.
Oh, gosh.
So...
And then with that perspex, it looks like a goldfish bowl, and you got this sort of water floating around.
Yeah. If you go down, he looks a little bit more like the Martian version of Homer Simpson.
Awesome.
Sorry, I was going to ask, how did the Shining Chrome black and white version come about? I know it's supposed to be, it could have been from the outset, but do you know anything about that?
That came out. I think that came out of the discussions in the editing process. I suspect because I think George was George was watching so much of the material in black and white at some point during grading.
Yeah.
I suspect at some point he went, "Oh, it's pretty lovely in black and white." He's always liked that concept, but I don't remember him ever talking about it being black and white. I mean, back when we were storyboarding the film, it was going to be in 3D then.
Yeah.
This is back before 3D became a thing again. So there was going to be 2 sequences in the film that were going to be full on 3D, and which is why there's this motif where people put on goggles.
Yeah.
So Furiosa pulls down her goggles. Nux pulls down his goggles.
That was the cue for the
which is the cue to put on your glasses. And then when you saw goggles off ahead, that was the cue to take your goggles back off again, your glasses back off again. And these 2 sequences are going to be in 3D were the Fury Storm and the whole end chase. From them going back to the Citadel. From then on, it was going to be 3D until the destruction of the Giga Horse and the Dorfwagen, and the truck, the war truck. So they were always considered to be 3D, and this is the old technology where it was going to be red white, red green, split and stuff like that. So it was going to be color then. So at some point there became some sort of discussion about the chrome idea, but black and chrome idea. But I think that would have come out of the editing process.
Or the marketing department or the accountants.
That would have very much been. They would have liked it.
Warner Brothers would have gone, "Oh yes, please! What a good idea!"
Anything, yes,
is the whole issue to do with Warner Brothers and George all sort of sorted out now? Ready for to allow them to make possibly the next one?
I believe so. I haven't seen George for a few months, so I'm not sure. But I gather that if it's not sorted, then I think
it's close.
That's
great.
On the verge of being completely sorted.
Yeah.
So there's hope for us all.
Yeah.
I think there's different discussions. I think there's been movement in positive directions.
Brilliant. Yeah, because everybody just wants the next film. So do you have a clue what the next film is called?
No.
No. I might have read a couple of scripts at some point.
Hold on. So there are actually scripts, whereas there weren't in the last one. That means it must be quite a way down the line.
Oh no. There was a script for the last one. I don't have a copy of it here, but the script for Fury Road was actually written after we storyboarded.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah.
And it's 354 pages long.
Yeah. So there was a question earlier. What happens with the storyboard after the film?
We burn them.
You burn them.
And if you dance around the ashes singing Hallelujah.
Have you ever thought of releasing them as a book, as like a collector's book, or something like that?
Yes, I've talked to George about that several times.
So
but that would be, for fun. It's like the biggest thing, isn't it?
It would be nice, but George keeps on going, "Oh no! I don't think they're suitable for publication." And I'm just going,
please come on.
Can I just clean them up? Can I just clean them up then, please?
I just hope the War Boys survive in it.
So the film, so the possible next film, which you may have seen a script already when the other one was being worked on. So has George sort of already got the next script sort of ready? I know they haven't started filming or anything yet, but the story's sort of 90% nailed down. Do you think?
I'd say so.
Wow.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah, no, I mean, it went through a very different process, that one, because it's not like Fury Road, which is this massive action sequence that goes for 2 hours. Because writing action's really hard and really boring to read. So one of the reasons why George storyboarded the entire thing, because it was just a natural way of actually trying to figure out how to make it work. I think the other story, which may be possibly a prequel, is much more of a grand epic piece, which is much more about politics and there's all this other stuff going on as well. So it's not just an action sequence. There's going to be some incredible action in it, but the scope is, Fury Road is essentially a very intense 3 days in the life of the Wasteland, whereas the next film or the prequel or whatever it is possibly the story of a life up to a certain point.
Yeah.
And that becomes a much more epic theme. So yes, hence
So
can't wait.
Just a quick question. Well, you can't see, but we've got our own Thundersticks, so we blame you for all of this.
Do they explode?
Thundersticks.
Not yet, but we've got someone working on it.
Steering wheels.
Oh, Terry! Now, Terry! Now!
So what? Looking back on Fury Road, it's such an iconic film. What is your proudest bit of your involvement within Fury Road? Because it's so iconic. This film is like one of the world's, one of the greatest films ever.
Proudest bit. Oh, look, honestly, I think I'm just proud of the actual film in general and and how it all came together with all these different people working towards this common idea that George had. It was all in George's head originally. It was literally just watching something being put together by all these different people from a common idea, where the storyboards were a hugely key part of it. That was the core of the whole film. But how everything that got added to it just built.
Yeah.
Instead of actually just making something not work quite as well or going off on a different tangent, everything came into this glorious whole which just supported everything else in the film. So in a lot of ways, I'm just going to say the whole film is just something I'm proud of, everything in it. A way that you asked me, when did you always know the film was going to be good? And obviously, the answer is no. You hope it's going to be good, but when I started on comic books after 13 years of waiting for George to think about it, thanks, George. I hadn't done that for a while.
Thanks a bunch.
Yeah, thanks, George. Poking you in the eye, George. But I had to go into the office, and George wanted me to see the film, and this was 8 months before it came out, but they were a long way through the editing process. But it was still rough. The third act of the film still had a whole bunch of stuff that needed to be done to it. Some compositing, some of the visual effects in terms of replacing the environment and stuff like that hadn't been done. And there was a bit of green screen still being sorted, but I sat down and I watched the entire film, and no final mix or anything like that. They had a little screening room up at the top of the old theatre, and I went and sat up in this very dark little room at the top of one of the towers and watched the film. And it was the first time I've literally come out of the film, and it's still rough, but I come out of the film just going, I need a drink, and I actually feel like having a cigarette, and I don't smoke.
Get a pipe.
And I went and sat down in the foyer for about an hour and just thought about what I'd watched, and just went, fucking hell, that's fucking amazing. And interestingly, that version, which hadn't been finessed, was much more about Max.
Right.
But not in a really subtle way. It was just the way it had been. Those little moments hadn't been finessed yet. So Tom Hardy was much more front and center just by the way it had been cut and the way they just pushed certain moments. So they really had fiddled with it very subtly to make it more about Furiosa through the process, which is just one of those things that George does. His noodles, his little. But yeah, that's when you just go, okay, right, okay. I've just seen a rough version. Half of it's still, not finished, and bloody hell, okay. Oh, so yeah.
Did you feel it strayed very far from the storyboarding when you saw this version? Pretty
George George happily says it's 80% the storyboards and 20% not.
Right.
So there was just things that just
that's a high hit rate.
Yeah, well, because that's how it was written.
Yeah.
So you're trying to figure out to tell the story in a visual format, and then why would you stray from that after you've done all that 2 years of bloody storyboarding? Why would you move away from it? I mean, George hadn't prevised anything. Well, he prevised a little bit here and there, mainly the visual effects, heavy stuff like the Citadel, shots of the Citadel and the Fury Storm. Other than that, he hadn't really done anything else.
I have to say, we survived a storm like this.
It was.
I'm not joking.
In the Mojave.
My skin is still soft, very soft, baby bottom.
Was that that was in the Mojave Desert, over it. It wasn't as bad as the film, but it was, especially for the UK people. We're not sort of used to the sunshine or the sand.
But would you go to the Wasteland Weekend? I would like to see what you think, because for us, this is like the closest you can get to a film, because we basically live Fury Roads. We went out on the road street, with the vehicles of the V8, and it's like feels like you are in the film. It's just like total crazy magic.
I think I'd have to say I'd love to go at some point or another. So that would be highly entertaining. I'd love to take George. That would be even more fun.
Oh, even more fun, yeah.
George would be like a little lost koala, just going.
Oh, bless him.
Also, you do have an invite. We're going to create our own post-apocalyptic festival over here in the UK. It was going to be this year, but I'm really not sure what's going on at the moment. But
why not?
I don't think anyone is.
Might happen, but who knows?
Whenever, we would love to have you over, and also. You've been invited to the Mad Max Road Warrior 40-year anniversary at Silverton, and I will send you over the big invite where they're trying to get Emil Minty will be there, the Feral Kid, and Bruce will hopefully be coming. Bruce Spence, etc.
The Spence, all 6'7" of them.
Have you ever been to Silverton, where they did Mad Max 2?
No.
No.
You don't have to.
No, not yet. No, I've driven near the area, but I've never actually been.
Right, yeah.
Mind you, that's because I was driving from one city to another very rapidly, collecting owls, which is a long story.
Owls.
Oh,
like the fluffy owls. Do you know that they have like really long feet?
Yes.
I didn't know that. I just found that out. I thought they had like tipples. No, they have like really long feet.
So, is there any reason why you collect owls, then, Mark? Is this a hobby?
No. This is one of those weird moments where I was literally driving between Canberra and Adelaide, which is just through this district called the Hay District, which is incredible. It's the part of the Australia which used to be the inland sea, and it's incredibly flat, and the highways just go straight. And I'm driving along this, and it's getting dark, and I start seeing dead birds on the side of the road. I'm just going, what the fuck's going on? Driving along, and then after about 5 minutes of seeing dead birds, and just go, what the? Okay, this is weird. So I stopped and pulled over and had a look, and it was an owl, and you don't often see owls in Australia. So it's just like, that's weird. Dead owl. Drove along a bit more. There's another one. There's another one. And I this is when I was doing a PhD. And I was going to be going back to Canberra afterwards, and I had all these people who I knew at CSIRO, who are the government labs, and I went, Matt, this is weird. All these owls dying. Maybe I should collect a few and take them back for people to have a look and see what the problem's going. So I start picking up dead owls. So drive along, grab an owl, put in the boot, drive along. There's another owl, put in the boot, and I must have collected about 5. And while this is happening, I see there's another car right down the other end of the highway driving towards me, and I'm just going, oh, there you go, that's that car. It's going to take me about half an hour to get here because that's what it's like. Driving along, little headlights. Oh shit, the car just went past. And anyway, but I noticed after a while that car is stopping all the time and
picking up owls.
And so
he's dropping the owls.
We got close to each other, and I was pulled over the side of the road, picking up another owl, and this guy drove up, and he slowed down, he stopped, and he went, yeah, g'day, how are you? And I went, I'm good. And he went,
more penguins.
Yeah, from the back of his car, and he went, it's a weird night, isn't it? I went, slightly odd. And he went, have you seen all these owls? I went, yes. And he went, yeah, I've got a boot full of them. I'm taking to CSIRO.
No.
And I went, oh, you want more?
Oh my god!
It's something I got earlier.
Yeah, exactly. So
Did you ever find out what happened to them?
Yeah, come on.
I haven't heard anything about it
Bloody
since.
hell.
I've seen movies.
It's a story about
The
It's
birds.
It's a story.
It's like when they're all attacked, so it sounds like very creepy.
Aliens, I say. Aliens. Is it?
Oh, I mean, if Hay District, I wouldn't be surprised.
Have you, because you're over in sunny Sydney, etc., and over in a place with nice weather, unlike the UK, have you ever been bit by a snake or anything like that? Because you have some bizarre wildlife over there.
I have yet to have been bitten by a snake. However, I have walked out of the back door of a farmhouse in my socks to take out the rubbish, stood on one snake,
Oh God!
looked down as I take another step, and stood on another snake, and been standing on 2 snakes.
He starts slithering.
Oh my God!
Well, I was on a farm, and the guy I was staying with, it was the father of a girlfriend of mine, and I called out and said, Mr. Spackman, I'm standing on 2 snakes, and he went, don't move, I'll get the shotgun.
Oh dear! Oh my God! Because as you,
he was quite cross.
that's ninja moves. That is great. So
Ninja, 2 in one
So
go.
also, not to be outdone though, the UK does have dangerous animals. We have hedgehogs over here. So
They are brutal.
brutal.
They are brutal. We have
And toads.
And a toad. So
and the toads can be nasty. I mean, it depends what you do with them. I mean, Ryan Brown out there now looking at them.
we've got to get you over here and down the pub with Ryan Brown, because that would be highly entertaining.
That would be
a
great.
fun one.
Don't forget, that'd be
I wouldn't survive.
Oh, you would be.
I don't think you would. Not with those guys.
Scallywag has got some good cures to help you for that, to survive it. He helped me a lot.
I do.
Yeah, you did.
I have a question for you, Mark. How did you?
And it wasn't a
How
shotgun.
did you get involved with 2000 AD and Judge Dredd? Where did that come from?
Ooh, therein lies a story. So literally, I'm doing. So firstly, I've read 2000 AD for many years. Just because it was actually the first proper comic book I read after Asterix. And I didn't read it until I was 15, and I was on a plane flying between Norfolk Island and Sydney. And this other kid had 3 copies of an American reprint of some Judge Dredd stories, and so I read them. I'd gone from Asterix to a story about the city in this massive futuristic city in total chaos. Hundreds of thousands of people dying, and the main hero on this giant bike machine gunning crowds to try and get to save someone or get to a block to actually find out what the hell's going on. And I just went, what the fuck? And so Asterix to that. So, and I started reading 2000 AD after that. And then, so I've been a fan for years, and I used to draw Judge Dredd comics for myself back in the days. They were all bloody awful, but I liked drawing. Although he's a hard bugger to draw. And anyway, so I'm literally just finishing up on the Mad Max comics, and I'd never actually really thought about it. It never occurred to me to do it. And someone on Facebook had put down one of those hypotheticals. If you wanted to see Judge Dredd going against a film franchise, who would you like to see him cross over with? And I went, oh, Mad Max, of course. And I noticed that the editor of 2000 AD, Matt Smith, liked that. And for some reason or other, way back in the distant past when we were all getting on Facebook, Matt Smith had got on and for some reason or other, I don't know why, I'd sent him a friend request and he'd accepted. Don't know why. He didn't know me from a bar of soap. So I was able to send him a message. So I sent him a message and just said, oh, look, hey, I just noticed that you liked my idea about the Judge Dredd Mad Max crossover. Well, I'm literally sitting just outside George Miller's offices.
Wow.
I'm literally sitting, and I can go into his office and ask him whether he'd like to do that or not. Oh, my
God.
And George went, and I got this response. Okay. With a little question mark at the end of it. And I went, okay. So I went in and I went, hey, George, just wondering, you know how we've talked about 2000 AD, because we talked about 2000 AD when we were doing the film on a number of occasions. And obviously we had Brendan McCarthy there, so we did. And I said, you know the character Judge Dredd, any interest in the concept of doing a story where you could put Max and Judge Dredd together? And George went, oh, that's an interesting idea. Yeah. What?
10 years later.
Can we do that after we finish the two other films?
Oh.
And it was like, yes. Thinking, well, he used to make the first. And Jesus, it's going to be.
Yeah,
I'll be about 80.
So in essence, there's this idea floating out there. So I got back on Messenger and I sent Matt another message just saying, okay, George almost said yes.
Almost.
But I'll work on him. But he wants to wait until he's done the other two films. But in the meantime, if you've got any dread or anything that you might need an artist for, I'd happily put my hand up. And he just said, send me a sample. So I did, and he just sent me a message back about 10 minutes later saying, got a 6-parter on my desk, do you want to do it? It's just like, shit, that was easy. Okay.
Wow. So what other 2000 AD sort of character would you do if you could go off and do your own comic or your own film, because you could storyboard it? Is there anything out there that you'd think would make would appeal to you?
Well, there's obviously the standards that would make great films, like Johnny Alpha, Strontium Dog. I personally would love to see someone trying to make a Nemesis film, but I think it would be both and would break people's brains. There's so many things you could do. Nemesis would be fun, although Pat Mills would probably try and kill everybody if we tried to do that. I don't know. I'd love to have another go at a Dredd.
Yes.
There's so many things in 2000 AD that I think would be awesome to see. Bad Company would be a fun one. The original, that would be entertaining.
Why are so many of the good things tied up in legalese nonsense?
Yeah,
it's like Max Headroom. What? Why? Why is there no Dredd film again? Come on. bloody lawyers! Damn it!
I must admit, when I read 2000 AD when I was about 9, And before that, I'd read, I was a big Marvel fan, so I still am a massive Marvel fan. But the first time you read a 2000 AD, you think, holy hell. Oh my God, they're dipping all the bad guys in acid, and Dread's shooting everybody. And it's an eye-opener for a kid. And it's just, and I can't believe half the stories John Wagner wrote. They're so naughty. And you could buy them from like normal shops, like W.H. Smith's, like a normal bookshops, etc. How he got these ideas in a kid's story comic aimed at kids.
Yeah, see, I did it. He did it so many bloody times, and I did it once, and I got banned. Yeah, where's the justice? Yes.
Oh,
Well,
nice one. Where's the justice? Very good.
Yeah, there was another the Death Guild, which run the Thunderdomes in all the festivals like Burning Man, Wasteland. So they have actually a proper full-size Thunderdome where people fight in. So apparently they're running a club in San Francisco weekly, i.e. before COVID and whatever. So, and you have to when you bring a dead squirrel, you get free entry. So you would have gone far with your owls.
You would have had VIP.
So if I bought a truck of ours,
you had a VIP area then. Not only free entry, that's VIP.
So after the Thor film, what would your dream storyboarding next role be?
Storyboarding. Look, I mean, to be honest, I'd love to. If George is doing it, and if he hasn't already done it by the time I'm finished, and then I'd love to be doing another Mad Max. That would be awesome.
Not Big Three.
With the War Boys, obviously.
Of course.
Just saying. Just give you ideas.
But then again, I'd also, I'd love to do some more comics. I mean, George did mention something about doing some more comics at some point for Mad Max. That would be fun, but I don't know if that's going to happen or not. And I'd love to do some more 2000 AD. I mean, that's also fun as well. But yes, the bank balance needs to be looked after.
Yeah,
and also like the Marvel, the amount of films Marvel are bringing out. Because you've done Black Panther, which won Oscars. And then you're on one we can't really talk about, which is going to be amazing. The last Thor film was just stunning. It was so funny, it was so brilliant. It was just amazing. They've got so many lined up. Are you sort of going to be working on Marvel for the next 10 years? Do you think?
It depends on how well I do on this one. I was actually asked to do Ragnarok, and the only reason why I couldn't do it was because I was finishing the Judge Dredd comic.
Right. Okay.
Well, at least you chose the right one to do.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that was the point. It's just like, I'd love to help you, but that was the story that Matt Smith had been given me. It was just like I've been waiting to do this
after all that time.
So I've got to do that, and I can't leave them in the lurch. So I passed up Ragnarok, which is just like, but I've got to do this other one. So
with the Marvel films, because they have such a quick turnaround, is it sort of like about a 3-year sort of plan or 4 year from like writing it, and then you're in for like a year or so of storyboarding, and then like 2 years filming, or what's the normal sort of battle plan for? No.
Well, I think they were. I mean, I think with Thor 4. I was more or less one of the first people on the ground to start working on it outside script writing. I started in October last year. They were supposed to be shooting in June, and it was supposed to be in cinemas in November the year after.
Gosh.
So it's not the George Miller process.
A well-oiled machine. Yeah.
So. Because we're going really well, so there's another section to our show, Mine and Cheese, with Skelly.
Oh, yeah, so do you want to explain it? Well, all it is it man or...
It's more fun if you don't explain.
I think it is, actually.
Yeah, exactly.
There is no explanation.
Okay, so
there's not a real explanation. I still haven't got it, but...
So Mark, are you ready? In fact...
I don't know. Hang on, water. I mean...
people have been asking what tea you've been drinking. What is your morning brew? Is it tea or coffee?
That is tea because I don't like drinking. I don't like making coffee at home because I always make it taste like shit. So no,
I'm using the wrong coffee.
I have the wrong operator. I'm a crap barista. Yeah, I'm having to make tea always taste like cat's piss. Coffee always tastes like cat's piss. No, I drink tea like a Northern Englishman.
Well done,
so
sir.
I brew it for about half an hour, and until it's it can barely stir it, and then you go, shit. Now it's cold. Now I have to microwave it because it's undrinkable.
Okay, then are you ready?
Okay, so man and cheese. Are you ready for man and cheese?
Just to put you on the spot, Ryan Brown, I think got them all right, but he is mad. He is.
I think he had access to the answers.
Clinically insane. So to start off with, then Phil Collins, man or cheese?
Is that a question, or is that?
Yes,
It's not rhetorical.
Well, that's cheddar of the worst variety.
Correct.
Oh,
Skelly.
correct.
So
Bob Ross, man or cheese?
Bob Ross. See, Bob Ross is not something I grew up with, so I'm not really keen. I don't know about Bob Ross, so I've never seen him actually do anything. So I'm going to go with, because he's so nice, I think he's going to be. He's a little bit like plastic cheese.
Okay.
Only the hair.
He's got a good point. He's got a
Only
very
the hair.
good point.
I'm like.
But I'm going to say no. I'm going to say I think he might be slightly mannish in a very nice way. But I think
hair
there's
is
a little.
actually cheese.
But, yeah, I mean that's whipped cheese on top.
cheese on
Okay,
top.
the next one, very, well, he's your arch enemy, Homer Simpson.
No, he's different. He's all man.
God, you're good at this. You are good at this.
Because he beat Flash Gordon. He smothered him with his belly. Just lay on
Skelly,
him.
have you got anything else?
I've got a niche one. Dennis Priestley, man or cheese?
Who?
He's a famous darts player, Dennis the Menace.
Darts player.
Arras.
He's darts and he's got sharp, pointy things that he can throw. So I'm going to say man.
He is in fact a cheese.
Is it? Well, see,
What sort of cheese?
see, Mark. Next time you're doing.
Slightly gone off Gruyere.
A slightly gone off career.
So this is a good idea for you, Mark. If you ever get like storyboard block, just get the man or cheese game out. You know,
And just screwed.
Yeah, and then just get frustrated. Like,
That's
no, I don't. No, who is this person?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Who is this person?
Yes. Yeah,
Also-
I'll be pulling it every 20 minutes.
Also this week, I don't know, Mark, if you've seen our Cult of V2A page, but this week we had like a workout video from our Steve Warboy, who choreographed a workout to FREAKSHOW. So we had some people taking part in this challenge. So, Stig, can you have a look at the videos? Sorry, I put you on the spot. That's why I'm laughing.
Only a
Yeah. So
can I give the result of Homer and Flash?
okay, yes.
Homer and Flash, and while you give the results, so
While
have
I
a look
rush
at the
for time.
videos, and then
You
we get
actually do your homework.
Okay.
Well, it's
I made a cocktail. Look, I made a special cocktail because Mark's on the show. I made the effort to make a special cocktail. Yeah,
All you
that's
had to
what
do
I
was look
did.
at some videos.
Yeah,
I've been well jealous of that cocktail the entire
and it's so
show.
delish. Seriously, I've never done it before, and it's so delish. I definitely will have that next week
What is
again.
your chosen poison down the pub then, Mark?
On the off chance I get down to the pub, whatever I can get my hand on, basically. So
I like you.
anything. So yes, on the off chance that I get out, which is not very often, because I'm drawing storyboards all the time.
Flash Gordon.
Pardon?
Flash Gordon for the win.
Flash Gordon, you won. Mark, you won.
Good God.
But only just.
Oh, right.
Just Jesus.
I was about to say.
It was a close run thing.
So what is the results here then? So how are the scores so far for Skelly?
On which one?
What do we got?
At the total so far, so I
Oh,
think most of them he won.
I think she's on the pop. She is on the pop.
Is
It's about 50-50.
No, it's
I think
no, you're more. I
the
think
four
it's
one or
2
four
for the
two,
guests and the rest for you, and we are number 7
Just
now.
crazy.
What?
Insanity.
I'll go with that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
You see, Skelly understood me.
I just nodded and understood.
On the Flash Gordon Homer thing, I'm figuring that everyone just figured that just Flash ran away from Homer.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
that's okay.
people are very happy that you won.
Reverse psychology.
So Flash ran away holding the tray of donuts, and Homer just chased him and died of a heart attack. Is that
I
right?
think that's very probable.
I
maybe-
think that's roughly it, yeah.
Maybe Flash had a ray gun because he's from the future or something. Maybe.
Which made everything go glowy and shiny.
Just going with the obvious stuff here rather than the weird niche stuff.
Do you a question from somebody on the chat? Do you ever hide stuff in storyboards, in jokes or whatever?
There are yes. I actually got
And
I
you can
got
tell us
phoned
about?
up. I got actually I was on Dark City. I had to do the storyboard sequence, which ended up being cut literally 5 minutes before I finished it, which was a sequence on a train with the hero having a paranoid attack in the train, and in the foreground I had a person reading a newspaper, and I put in the newspaper a headline of synchronized swimming team die in freak axe accident, and there was a picture of a man with an axe. Which was a direct homage to a John Wagner story in Judge Dredd years ago, which I loved. I've always been a fan of that. And so I put that in, and about 12 years later, the director rang me, and he was laughing. And I said, what are you laughing for? And he said, I've just been going back through the storyboards on Dark City, and I just saw that frame with that headline. So... But literally, no, I do that all the time. There's Dredd appears in the Mad Max comics a couple of times.
Oh right.
In the background, there's a film poster for Dredd 2. But the lawyers at DC, who obviously see everything, spotted that.
Yeah.
And so you have to change that. So it's called Grud.
Oh right.
But it's still Dredd on a bike. I didn't change the design. It's still Dredd on the Lawmaster. But the characters that I used to do comics with years and years and years ago, which were a stupid idea, but it was fun at the time, called Bug and Stump, which were 2 aliens, one with green with 4 arms and one with this long quiff.
Yeah.
He was pre-Johnny Bravo, but he looks like Johnny Bravo, but we came up with him several years beforehand. And I've put them in every single story I've done professionally. So they're always in the background. So if you go through all the stories I've done in 2000 AD, they're in there somewhere. Wow. And they appear several times in the Mad Max comics as well. So you always have to put in little jokes and gags and stuff like that, and hopefully someone will spot them. I mean, in the Mad Max stuff, because at that stage, Immortan Joe was blue. We had in the storyboards of all the smellies holding up stuff to be offered up to be taken up to the Citadel when the platform comes down. I had them all holding canisters of something called Omo, which is a detergent in Australia, which is blue.
Yeah.
So all these pictures of Omo, stuff like that. Please take
I'm so glad he's not blue though. It's just he's perfect.
It'd look like an angry Smurf.
Smurf, yeah.
A very threatening angry Smurf.
I'm threatened by it.
Yes. Anyway,
right, fitness video.
Yes. Okay.
Well, we had quite a bunch of entries and some really good ones. I thought Mark Standing was going to get it, and then I thought Freak Bear was going to get it. But I reckon that Tina's going to get it. Tina thought to get it. It's partially because Mark Standing reckoned it was really good, so he voted against himself.
Okay.
Schoolboy error, Mark.
Schoolboy error.
Tina.
Well done, Tina. It looks like Tina. You are the winner.
Woo!
Well done.
Big mama. Big mama.
Girl power.
So what it is, Mark, is Warboy Steve, who is a warboy, does his
Same as Steve.
V2A combat keep fit classes. We're going to release one a week. So and then all the crowd have a go, and then they send in their videos of them doing it. So I will send you over the videos. So that'll give.
And then I will get my 7-year-old in the film to stand there and
To
try
do
and
it as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. Well, there will be a next one coming next week, as I understand, because we want to keep all our people fit and engaged. So yeah, there will be another video coming next week, I think.
So
Excellent.
So on how are we looking with a Never Have I Ever?
I was about 99.9% know exactly what the answer is because they actually look at our bloody video.
yeah, there is a video of it, which is
Everyone knows that you don't play mini golf. in German. Oh, Bernhard Langer.
I'm actually, as a matter of fact, I'm very good at it.
Yeah.
That's because you're a fake German.
Yeah, that's it.
You see? Well spotted there. Nice one.
No, so the magic moment was I was jumping into the arms of the War Boys and was carried backstage, which was just like, it's like a live event on my Facebook page. So it's just marked. That's my life. Just a tick in the box, carried by the War Boys.
So the fun thing, Mark, is she does this every time we play Wasteland Weekend over in America. And the trouble is, she then flies.
How can you not?
She flies off being carried out with the War Boys. I'm getting ready for the next song, which she's also singing on, and I can just see her going off into the distance. I'm like, oh shit! What are we going to do now? What are we going to do now?
I'm not coming back.
So far, I returned.
So far, slightly manhandled.
Slightly.
Who was your favourite character in Mad Max 2, by the way? Because that was a big influence on you, I believe.
Ooh, who is my favourite character? I do have a quite a soft spot for the feral kid's fun, but I've just got to go with the line that's low.
Yeah.
So Bruce Spence.
Yeah, awesome.
Jaro Captain.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever met Bruce?
I used to live just down the road from him in Balmain in Sydney. I lived down the road from him for 8 years.
Wow.
In fact, the first film I did, Dark City, he was on.
Yeah.
And so he was the first actor who I met on a professional basis. I had a lovely talk with him at the beginning of shoot.
Did he use your garden as a runway?
No, he didn't. I was living in a flat. I had no garden. But I think he tried, but it didn't work very well. There's a bloody great fig tree outside the front as well, which would have got in the way. But he's immensely tall, as we all know.
Yeah.
He's also quite private and quite shy. So every time I saw him down the street in Balmain, and I'm sure this must happen to him all the time because he's so recognisable. You just go, "Hi, Bruce," and he just go, "Oh no, there's another one." So because there was quite a few well-known Australian actors who lived in that area. But then he sold his house only a few years ago, and coincidentally, out of complete perversity, my wife's best friend ended up buying his house.
Oh, wow. Oh my God.
Now we go into his old house and we visit, and we just go, "Hey, look at that! The door lintels have all got dents in them from Bruce's head because he's so tall."
What's Hugh like? I've spoken to him on sort of on Skype and stuff, but I've not actually met him. What was your interactions with Hugh?
Well, Hugh, I talked to him a few times on Justice League Mortal, and he was a very naughty boy.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yes, but he was a very naughty boy, but he was also absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
So he was one of those people. He was the oldest cast member in that group, and he immediately took on the role of mentor to all the younger actors.
That comes through in the film, though. It really does, doesn't it? He's the leader. Yeah.
Oh, no, I think that's just not something he naturally does. I mean, I think
yeah.
professionally as well. But entertainingly, when we were doing Justice League Mortal, Megan Gale, who played Valkyrie, was also in the film, and she was cast as Wonder Woman. And she's known, she's renowned in Australia for being, a model, a supermodel. So she has a particular persona that everybody sees. But on Justice League Mortal, she'd be in the room with Hugh, and Hugh has a kind of weird British Australian thing going on.
To be a fly on the wall.
Yeah. So he's sitting there, blah, 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 and she's sitting there just in this broad Australian accent, just going, fuck this and fuck that. And he's sitting there just going, that's amazing. I love this. This is fantastic. Tell you though, when it comes to Hugh, though, there's one meeting I wish I had been at, and I've heard stories about this, and apparently there's footage of it somewhere. There was a 3-hour meeting where Nico, the dramaturge who was all about the DNA and the detail, got Hugh Keysburn, John Howard, who played the People Eater, and Richard Carter, who played the Bullet Farmer, to all sit in a room in character and talk about politics.
Wow! Oh my gosh! Wow, that would be awesome.
And the politics of the wasteland, about the politics of the wasteland, I should say. Yeah. And to argue about what they were doing. And apparently there's footage of it somewhere, and apparently it got quite heated. I think one of them actually got up and left and stormed off at some point, and then came back and said,
"Oh my gosh!"
Yeah, and because Richard Carter was lovely. He's this he's also big as well. But he's this gentle man who would smoke e-cigarettes and stuff like that, and stuff like that. And John Howard I never got to meet, but I imagine John was lovely as well. But just seeing them all in character would have been fucking fantastic.
Did any of them sort of come into the office where you were doing all the storyboards for walkthroughs and anything like that?
They all. Some of them did. By that stage when they were really getting into it, I was gone. I was elsewhere doing other things, but I was there the day that Charlize Theron came in. In fact, I'm the one who let her into the building accidentally.
Was somebody else cast for it then?
Exactly.
She walked in. She's down the street.
This is just this person sitting there in sunglasses and a cap, and it's just like, who are you? Oh, yeah, if you want to come in, that's fine.
You look all right.
All right. Yeah, less hair though.
But lose half the arm.
And a fair few people came through the door. I mean, Heath Ledger came in and talked to George, and that was interesting, meeting him briefly, and a few other people came in. And I have a sneaking suspicion, although I don't know. I think I met Tom Hardy, but I don't know, because I just remember some man with some sort of dreadlocks thing and a beanie on, mumbling, walking past me at some point, and as he walked past, on his way to see George, and I think that was Tom Hardy, but I don't know. Oh, look at bloody phone's ringing in the background.
They've seen you on YouTube.
That's Tom Hardy.
Or George.
You said enough. Stumm.
Are
we there?
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Impasse. Hang on. I'm going to have some more water.
Careful, we're not very long.
We better call it a day, I think.
Yeah, we're coming up to 2 hours.
Mark, we would love to have you back on again sometime, sir. You are an absolute pleasure, and we've only touched the surface of your crazy stories and insight in your wild world. Awesome luck on your new film, sir, with your storyboarding, and we are
hopefully on Tuesday.
Super, good luck for the Tuesday meeting. Super excited for everything you're doing. Also, maybe at some time it would be amazing to see if you ever thought about releasing an art book of yours. That would be something that a lot of people would be really excited by.
I have to do something decent. I'll work on George doing the storyboards first and see how.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It'll only take another 12 years.
Have you got a shout out for anybody, Mark, before we go?
Everybody, hello, you're all lovely.
Have you enjoyed it? Have you enjoyed the show? I think everybody online has. Everybody's loved it. There's loads and loads of comments.
Lots of luck for you.
I feel like I've blathered at you for 2 hours and told you absolutely nothing. But it's been fun blathering, and I have actually thoroughly enjoyed myself.
Awesome.
And I didn't even mention Francis Ford Coppola one. There's another story. That's another story for another time.
Exactly.
What a tease! What
so what's the time now over in Australia? Is it sort of like 9 a.m?
It is 8 a.m. and I can hear a 7-year-old in the background who's just waking up shouting at mum.
Okay.
So things are going to go poorly shortly.
Definitely. So just before
there were 2 birthday shout-outs, I think.
Yep.
Mark, was it
Cheyenne and the Black Cat Tribe?
Yeah, so it's her birthday tomorrow, and I think Nathan is his birthday on Wednesday. So happy birthday to both of you.
Happy birthday, guys. A quick
hands.
question then, Mark, for our next guest. Our next guest, next Saturday, we've got AD from the Mad Max 2 Museum over at Silverton. The crazy English guy who loved Mad Max so much, he built a Interceptor, was on the TV, then moved his whole family out to Silverton and opened a museum.
They are called interesting life choices, and I commend him
Definitely.
for it.
Do you have a question for him, sir?
Has he actually? Have they actually got the Interceptor wreckage out of that bloody scrapyard?
Scrapyard, yeah, that's a good question.
Well,
have they actually managed to get it out yet? Is it still there?
There is a film that they're making called, is it Archaeologist of the...
is that Melvin Z?
Yeah, of Melvin. Melvin is awesome. I love Melvin. We've got to get him on. And they had to go at digging it all up, and they've had a good look. Have you seen the film? It's brilliant. It is. We're going to try and get Melvin on. Melvin actually went to the Mad Max convention over in Tokyo and got me a load of stuff. So Melvin is an absolute star.
Actually, you know what? Going to the Japanese one would be amazing as well. I mean, I'd love to go to the Wasteland.
Oh man, yeah,
definitely.
The Japanese one would be amazing. I'm going to be so much fun.
Also, would you, if we can get you to one of the big festivals when they all start opening up again, would you come on stage with us, sir? We would love to take you on stage in front of thousands of people and just cause chaos. We have snow cannons and war boys, and
I'm sure I could be a magnificent job.
I even crowd you if you want.
Yes, I'll do that.
Have you been chromed before?
But I have not been chromed.
It's always a first time.
There is always a first time, but I'm not completely convinced that the war boys would catch me if I jumped into the audience. So
I could have a word for them.
Like
you don't know till you try.
That sounds like
they'll just go. No. Just let him hit.
Well,
no, I don't.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you.
But I would be up to. I'd be up
you
for
would.
that.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. We honestly, it's been an absolute joy tonight. It's been brilliant fun. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of the day, or go back to bed for a bit before your son wakes up, or
the 7-year-old daughter.
7-year-old daughter. Sorry.
There's no sleep to have. There's no sleep.
There's no sleep.
That's the way it
I
works.
have to go to the park and throw frisbees now.
So what's?
We are not allowed to go outside.
No, that's true. So what's her favourite superhero?
She seems to be very taken on Ant-Man and Groot.
Cool.
Oh, Groot, I like her.
Awesome.
Yeah,
She's got taste.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Ant-Man as well. Ant-Man, brilliant films.
And I think she likes. Thor as well, but I don't think she knows why.
she just likes him. Oh, awesome. Well, have a wonderful day. Thank you, everybody, for joining, and we will see you all soon. Good night.
See you next week. Good night, everyone. Woo!
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.
Ooh, bye.
He's waving.
And also, I'd just like to say a big thank you to Captain Tom Moore, who did an amazing thing to generate a load of money for the NHS. He's up to £23 million so far. So, well, he's 99 years old and nearly 100, and what an absolute star. So thank you, Captain Tom. Yeah, stay safe, everybody. Please subscribe, and we will see you all next week, guys. Take care. Bye.